know about you guys as an audience, but that musical interlude always just pumps me up a lot. So I hope you're as excited as I am, and welcome back to another very exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants program. If you've been joining us over the last 3 weeks, this is part 4 of 5 in our epic Guardians of Wild series in collaboration with the amazing folks at the Toronto Zoo. So we've covered all sorts of incredible topics, a supplement to over 40 other programs we've done with the zoo over the years, all of which are on our YouTube channel. If you haven't had the chance to go to the Toronto Zoo in person, check out their website. They really do incredible work to help us understand and save species and bring them to the public like you. So go check it out. There's lots to explore and discover. Now, one of the big questions that we get in almost every broadcast we do with the zoo is, how do you get your animals? And the answer that our educator extraordinaire Mary Ellen provides is that we try to breed them. Most zoos around the world now are not going out and capturing animals from the wild. They're breeding them in captivity. And as anyone who's ever worked in a zoo can tell you, that can be a challenging enterprise. We really need to know and understand a lot about animals before we can have them breed. They need to feel very, very comfortable. And so today, we are going to talk a little bit about biology and how we understand certain animals at the zoo and how we can get them to reproduce to help make sure that people like you get to experience these wonderful animals. And the animal that we're going to feature for that is a snake. Now, we've talked a lot about mammals. We've had a lot of them. They're really cool. I'm a snake guy. I grew up with Steve Irwin as my hero. So the fact that we get to talk reptiles is super cool today. I hope if you're a little skittish around snakes, by the end of today's broadcast, you're not. But it's such a pleasure having you. And without further ado, I'm taking you over to Mary Ellen and the zoo team. Welcome back.
Thank you so much, Jesse. I love the introduction as always. Welcome, everyone. We are in a bit of a different area here today than maybe our typical broadcasts that we've had in the past, being out looking at full animal exhibits or out on the zoo site. We are actually in our administrative complex and our health center right now, kind of a behind the scenes sort of hidden zoo area to learn, as Jesse mentioned, all about these incredible native species. Here are some of our snake species like we've got behind us on the sign here, and learn all about them, how we're making their breeding programs here more natural, they're living more natural, and how we care for them to make sure that they have the best life possible here, but also the most successful life out in the wild potentially as well. All right, without further ado though, we're gonna have Jesse bring up our land acknowledgement here quickly for us, and then I'm gonna introduce you to some of my amazing colleagues. So first, I would just like to acknowledge that the land that we are standing on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Massasauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We would also like to acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Massasaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Massasauga and Chippewa bands. Thank you so much, Jesse. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to two of my amazing colleagues here at the Toronto Zoo. We're going to meet Rick first here, and he's going to take us inside with the snakes to get up close and personal with them. And then shortly, we are going to meet one of my friends, Nick, here, and we're going to go into our surgery suite here at the Toronto Zoo as well. So let me just turn around our camera for us, and we will get this party started. So, and a 1 and a 2 and a Rick, take it away.
Hi everyone, as Mary Ellen said, my name is Rick Voss. I'm the lead keeper of reptiles and amphibians here at the Toronto Zoo, and what we're going to do is, look at one of our Massasauga holding facilities where we are doing lots of research and work to improve their well-being and reproductive output. Here, the sign beside us is a sign that we have posted throughout the province. This is one of the major threats to Massasaugas in the wild. Road mortality or snakes getting hit by cars. So that's some of the things that we work with partners to try to mitigate. And we're going to go into the room here. You can see, because these are a venomous species, you have to have special training. Our staff goes through special training to be able to work with them, to be approved to work with them. So we have restricted access to this room. And we also have lots of signage to demonstrate that these are dangerous animals, potentially dangerous animals that we're working with if you end up getting bitten. So this is one of our very basic cards that we have. We also have cards that go everywhere with a snake when we're moving it around. It says the Eastern Massasauga rattlesnake, which is the common name for it, Cistrus catenatus, that's the scientific name. And this is the antivenom that you would need to receive should an accident happen. But our training is geared to prevent us from having to deal with that kind of thing. So we're going to go in, restricted access key. This is also what we call a biosecure holding, which means we want to control potential diseases that we're bringing in and out of it. So I'm going to change my boots here as part of our protocol for making sure we're not transferring unwanted parasites or diseases back and forth. And I'm going to spray Mary Ellen's boots so she doesn't have to change boots. And then we're going to come in here and I'll tell you a little bit about Massasauga rattlesnakes. So we're going to come right through into this end room here to see some of our Massasaugas set up individually in these enclosures. Massasaugas are what we call a pygmy rattlesnake. They are fairly small, really cryptic, which means they're hard to find. You could live within Massasauga range. You could be right in a very close area with Massasaugas in the wild and not even know they're there because they would rather not be seen. They are threatened across their range, which extends from Canada around Georgian Bay area, right down through Michigan and a few other states around the Great Lakes. As I said, they are threatened in both countries, so work like we're doing here to try to save them, both in the wild and maintaining an insurance population here is important. But as I said, even if when we tell people that there are Massasaugas in Ontario, a lot of people have no idea because they never see them. Because as I said, we do field work where we go looking for them. We have teams of people that go out looking for them, and they are very hard to find because, like I said, they don't want you to find them at all. They don't want you to see them, so they'll try to remain hidden. Just as far as these enclosures go, these are all standard glass tanks with lids that we can secure so that the snakes can't push them up. You can see right now some of these tanks are empty. They're labeled as such, so we know which ones hold snakes in them. Here's a typical enclosure card. The way that we identify these snakes is through their saddle patterns, like the pattern on their back. They're pretty unique. They're like a fingerprint in most snakes. So we identify them just by looking at them and use these photographs and indications of unique saddle patterns to tell us which individual is which. And I can actually open this lid up so that Mary Ellen can get a little bit better view of one. You can see they stay fairly calm. They're not too interested in attacking people. People often think that that's what snakes want to do, but not so the case. And some of the work that we're doing here in terms of their general day-to-day care is providing them with the basics of what they need to ensure their well-being, both physically and mentally. I'll just close this up so I can point out some of the features of their enclosures. They have 2 hide boxes in there, those black plastic boxes. Snakes like to feel contained and safe, so they do like to hide in these boxes. Most of the snakes are probably in their boxes now. And then we also provide them with proper lighting. These lights are called metal halide lights. They provide both heat as well as ultraviolet radiation for them, UVB, which is ultraviolet radiation that is in the beneficial wavelength. So it is actually good for snakes. It helps with vitamin D production. So we want to provide that with them. We also have water bowl that's cleaned regularly. Substrate of mulch allows them to gain traction, and we can also use the mulch to increase humidity as we need to, say during a shed event. I'm sure most of you guys are probably aware that snakes shed their skin. When they do that, before they start to shed, actually, they go through a stage where they secrete a fluid underneath the old layer of skin, and that helps to loosen it up. And when we see that they're in that stage of the shed cycle, we'll usually soak the exhibit or the enclosure down a fair bit so that shedding goes well for them, and that way we don't end up with problems with snake skin stuck on them where it shouldn't be, like over their eyes. They actually shed their skin completely, their whole body. They don't have eyelids. They have clear scale basically over their eye, and that sheds off with the skin every time that they shed. So in this room, this is what we're calling like a conservation breeding room. And it's part of a program that we're involved in and have been involved with here at the zoo since 2006. It's the Eastern Massasauga Rattlesnake Species Survival Plan through the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. And what it is basically what's the word I'm looking for? A population, an assurance population that zoos maintain. So if something goes wrong in the wild with the wild populations, say they become extirpated from a certain area, which means they disappear from a certain area, or even if in a really bad situation, if an animal goes extinct in the wild, an assurance population in a zoo or aquarium can have a reservoir of animals so that we don't lose them completely. One thing that zoos have been doing in AZA in recent years is trying to incorporate more of a one-plan approach where we are working more with people who are doing field work and field research and actual on the ground conservation work with species. So as a result of that, we're transitioning from a species survival plan or an SSP to a SAFE program. And that SAFE acronym stands for Saving Animals from Extinction. It is more or less similar to an SSP, but it has that added part of it where there is what we call an in situ or in the field conservation component to it, where we may be doing activities like reintroducing animals to the wild to recover a population that is in trouble and needs our help. Historically, within the species survival plan, we have had difficulty producing this species in the numbers we need to support a conservation program like that. We do not see the same reproductive output or basically the number of babies produced by females in our conservation breeding centers in the SSP compared to snakes that give birth in the wild. So we have thoughts that we are not closely mimicking or copying their natural history enough. So we're not providing them with all the natural cues that they need to go through their reproductive cycle and have successful reproductive output. So we've initiated a few different research projects here, including just going back and looking at what we've done in the past and what we're going to do in the future and how we want to basically improve our reproductive techniques so that they are more like providing animals with what they need in the wild. So some of the research we have been working towards, I can show you in this next room here, involves male-male combat, which is a ritualized combat. They don't actually hurt themselves. We'll put in here, we just finished with a University of Illinois student or PhD student. This is what we call our combat arena. So we will have two males and a female in here, and they go through their ritualized combat, and then there's a mate selection process where the male pairs up with the female. We have had some success with this so far, and although there's not much data to support it yet, we did have one birth event where we did see a much better reproductive output. We want to continue on this research and add to it a polygamous breeding, or basically we want males to be able to mate with multiple females. And that's another thing that we couldn't do historically within the species survival plan because of the way it ran, but that's things that we are going to do to try to mimic what they actually do in the wild to improve our ability to produce snakes that we can use for a reintroduction. So.
Sweet.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. How cool is that? Mary Ellen, sorry.
Very cool. That's okay. All good. So this has been our kind of inside view into our snake holding area or snake breeding area of the Toronto Zoo. Now we are going to take a quick adventure here together, Jesse, and head out to our kind of wildlife health center, actually, a place that we have been many times before. Here we go. We're just going to have to open the door, and we're going to head on down here with my colleague Nick. He's going to lead the way for us. There we go. And we're going to head down, and everyone who's watching right now, you're getting a little bit of a behind the scenes tour as well here. This is not normally an area of the zoo that public come. This is more of our offices, or kind of what we might call the brain of the zoo. So we're kind of in the back half of the Wildlife Health Center, where you'd see our directors, our managers, maybe our teams meet, have meeting rooms, have lunch rooms. We're going to pass a boardroom in a second here where very important meetings happen, all those fun areas. Just like we have to worry about the welfare, you know, of our animals here, there's also some concern and thought going into the humans being here and being able to care for these amazing species and do all of this research. So kind of a cool look to go through. And here we are, we have arrived.
Hello there, how are you doing, everyone? So my name is Dr. Nick Masters. I'm a vet, and I've spent the last 20 years working with wild animals, mostly in zoos, but also in the wild. And here at your Toronto Zoo, I'm the Director of Wildlife Health, so looking after the veterinary, nutrition, and welfare science teams. And I think my personal highlight of being here in Canada has actually been working with these snakes, so I'm really pleased to be talking about them. They're an amazing species, and got some great people. You just met Rick, but we work with lots of partners. It's a really big collaborative effort, so particularly Wildlife Preservation Canada are involved with the reintroduction of the species actually in the wild, in the field. So I'm going to just show you into what we call the hospital area of the Wildlife Health and Science Centre, and it's card access again. Come on in, and the reason that it's card access is because here in the hospital area, if you like, we've got a whole bunch of hazards. So a laboratory down the end here, all sorts of dangerous chemicals and things in there, where we're looking at blood from animals and feces and the water that they live in, trying to check that the environment we've got for them is safe and going to keep them healthy. We've also got controlled drugs here, of course, that we use for the animals sometimes, so things like anesthetics. They can be harmful to people, so we have to be really careful about how we look after those. And radiation as well, we're using X-rays a lot. I'm just going to stop here to show you the kind of back way into our surgical suite that we'll be in a minute. This is the way that you would go through if you were one of the technicians or the vets, getting clean, getting scrubbed up and sterile, and putting your gown and gloves and things on so that you can do sterile surgery. And then when we come down this way, this is going to lead you into our main treatment area. This is a really amazing space. I've worked at lots of different zoos now around the world, and nowhere has anything quite like this that I've worked at. Not only is it a really purpose-built, really well-designed space, we've got all the equipment and area that we need. It's also on show to all of our guests, so you can see the window at the end there. That means people can watch us doing dental surgery on a tiger on this table right in front of them. And we've also got cameras so we can live stream some of that stuff to our Zoo Life app. But what we're going to talk about today is these snakes. So I'm just going to come over here. This is the other entrance into the sterile surgical suite. And this is pretty unusual as well to have at a zoo. We don't do lots of invasive surgery, so oftentimes we'll be doing something in here. It can be a little less clean, doesn't have to be perfectly sterile. But that's what we've got in this area here. And this is really important. Rick was talking about it before. We don't want to be introducing diseases to these snakes that are going to go out into the wild from, let's say, exotic snakes that we keep at the zoo, you know, non-native ones. And similarly, we don't want to infect our snakes at the zoo with anything from these Massasaugas, some of which have come from the wild initially for breeding before they go back. So we're really careful about all of that today, because we've got nothing on our hand. We can walk in all right. Thank you, Rick. So obviously this isn't this is not a real Massasauga. It's much too big, but we're going to come back to that in a second. So the reason we'd set this up in here to show it to you a little bit is to talk about what we do surgery-wise with them and why that's important. So they're what we call a cryptic species. They're really well camouflaged, and their first line of defense is to not really respond, even though they're venomous and they can strike. So I think you might have a little bit of video. Jesse might have a little bit of video that he could show here.
Yeah. I'll pull this up so you can just see how much they camouflage. So to the point earlier, like I grew up in Ontario, I've never seen one of these snakes in person, and neither do some of these animals walking right over them.
So you can see there's a raccoon doing it. It's just slowed down for you, I think. But yeah, as I say, although when they're hunting, they're striking and they're using their venom to disable the prey, this is the potential predator. First line of defense is just to sit quietly. So you can see that with a raccoon, and I think, yeah, here we go. This is a bird one as well. So their natural instinct, thanks, their natural instinct is to lie quietly. So what we're trying to do is release some of these snakes and then be able to follow them all individually. And the best way we can do that is to put these little radio transmitters into them. So we're going to show you some footage of that in a little bit. But first of all, I just wanted to show you that when those snakes come in here, they're still in their biosecure boxes. And then we've got a fake one here that Rick's lent me. Thank you, Rick. So what we're doing is they get put on the floor, which we can sterilize again, and then somebody really well trained and good at this, like Rick, can use one of these tubes. The snakes kind of decide to go up into the tubes if you hold them in the right places and the right ways, and then you can restrain them in here whilst they're still wide awake, and we can start their anesthetic by injecting them into a little vein in their tail just down here. And once they're asleep, we've got this fake much bigger version over here, but we're running an anesthetic just like you might, even for a person, but you know, vets and technicians working with wildlife have got good at doing this in lots of different species now. So you have an anesthetic machine, you've got some medical oxygen, and you're providing this gaseous anesthetic agent by this equipment. And we use tiny little, they're called endotracheal tubes, which once the snake is asleep enough just from the gas, you can open their mouths. We do all of this at a distance so that we have less risk of being envenomated. And we can place a tube into their trachea or windpipe, and then we can keep them asleep on this gas all the way through the surgery. And we can monitor it with a Doppler like this. You can prepare them for surgery with drapes like this, and so you're just keeping everything clean. You're not getting any dirt into the surgical site whatsoever. And over here, we've just got a little selection of some of the things that we're using for that. So some scrub to clean the skin. This is one of these drapes that we're talking about. It's kind of adherent, so it sticks on and doesn't move around. Some surgical equipment, some local anaesthetic, and blood-taking equipment. So now might be a good time to show the video. We've got a kind of bird's eye view of the video running from above, sped up. So this is one of these snakes. It's already partly asleep. You can just see there that I'm intubating it in the way that I described. Once it's asleep enough that it's safe to do so, and then we're hooking it up to the machine. And we're going to position it really carefully so it's in the right spot for the person, the technician monitoring the anaesthetic. And that's Rick's arm holding the snake in the tube just in case it gets a bit too light and starts to wake up. And that's me prepping the snake for surgery. So we're just getting it in the right position. We're actually measuring where we're going to put the radio transmitter. We want to make sure it's behind the liver. It doesn't interfere with any of the internal organs because we're going to put it right inside the snake. We'll see that in a bit. And we're prepping it surgically. We're doing this, as I say, as sterilely as we possibly can because these snakes, once they've had the transmitters put in them, they're going to stay here for a short period just to start healing, and then they're going to go back into the wild, and we're expecting them to get on and do everything as normal. So once it's prepared, we're draping it just like you would a human patient or a domestic animal as well, putting one of these disposable drapes on. So this is Dr. Kate, one of our staff vets. She's going to actually do the surgery. You just see her placing that now. It just gives her this completely clean surgical field, and she's got sterile gloves on and a gown and everything you can see. And then she's got her instruments. And she's going to make a little incision, a cut on the left side of the snake, about 2/3 of the way down its body. And she's going under the ribs and right through the skin and the body wall to get inside the snake and make this little hole, and then just check to see that she will be able to place the radio transmitter in there. I mean, you'll see in a second, but there are sort of, there's a little body to them, the size of a small grape or something, and then a long, thin antenna that has to run the length of the snake. Okay, so that's the end of that one. And then the next thing that we're going to show you, I'm just going to have a little disclaimer here because you're going to see the actual insertion of the radio transmitter into the snake. If you're at all squeamish, you might want to look away now. It's not particularly bloody, but just in case. Let's have a look at that. So here you go. So this is real time now. So she's just checking that she's got the end of the antenna. You can see that she's sliding that all the way in, all the way towards the tail of the snake. And then there's just that body that's left behind, looks like a little grape. And subsequently, that's going to get popped into the right inside the snake. And we're going to sew up the body wall and then the skin, and it's all going to heal up. There you go. So with that, we'd be able to track all of those snakes, and that's what we did. I think we did 22 of them altogether. One of them, the radio transmitter, didn't work, but the rest all got released to the wild. And the Wildlife Preservation Canada team were able to track those snakes and work out exactly how they were doing. And so that's the whole point of this project, really, is to see that these individuals not just survive, but that they flourish in the world. I think we're probably ready for questions at that point.
Well, first and foremost, thanks, gentlemen, and Mary Ellen and everyone. Our fake snakes, our videos of live snakes, like what amazing work that you do. And I've got to say, like when I was the age of our kids in today's program, I had no idea that we were doing this sort of work at zoos around the world. I had no idea we were doing surgeries on animals at all. This is something that I've come to know through these zoo programs. So to be able to see this, what it actually looks like firsthand is really great. And both of you basically have my dream job as a boy. So I'm very lucky to get the chance to chat with you. Thank you so, so much. We're going to head, as you said, to lots of questions. We've got tons of time together. YouTubers, Facebook audience, you guys already have a ton. We're going to go to our La Vie crew, Division 2. So stay tuned. We'll take some from online first. So Gio wants to know, back to our first bit, you talked about having anti-venom. Does it expire? Do you have to get new anti-venom? What's the deal?
We do have to carry, as a requirement of our accreditation, we have to carry anti-venom for all the species that we keep. We typically purchase what we call a polyvalent anti-venom, which means it's good for a number of species. So we can also use that anti-venom, one type of anti-venom, for a number of different species if we're called to in an emergency situation. But yeah, we have to buy it. It does expire, and then we have to buy it again. Very expensive. But one of the things that we know from research that's been done and ongoing research is that anti-venom, if it's stored properly, even though it may expire in 3 years, it can still be effective for maybe up to 20 years or more, depending on how it's kept. So we do hold all our expired anti-venom. So if there ever is an emergency, expired anti-venom is better than no anti-venom. So we do, because it is very expensive.
Yeah, well, thank you for the nuanced answer. And like, again, this is one of those things where we don't want to have to use it. Like, it's good to spend the money, even though we hopefully will never have to use that for anyone, because we don't want people being bit by venomous snakes. And that's what all the prep is for. So great question, guys. All right, I'm taking one more from online, and then we're going to go to our La Vie crew, Division 2 after that. Elena wants to know, are the snakes boys or girls? All the snakes that we featured today, are they a mix of everything? What's the deal?
So in the room we were in, there were some girls and some boys. We have a number of males, boys right now, that are out in an area where we hibernate them over winter. So we have 9 males in that outside building now, which we weren't able to see. But it's a place where I can do climate controlled temperatures and humidity and stuff just by bringing in cold air from outside. So it kind of mimics what's going on in the native environment. And since rattlesnakes are found around here, the temperatures we're experiencing here are similar to what they're experiencing where we would like to release them. So yeah, right now we are just hibernating males. In the future, potentially we will be hibernating both sexes to help improve that reproductive output and mimic a more natural
man. You cover not just the answer we asked for, but like a whole bunch of other answers too. We're just killing it in Q&A. Rick, keep it going. We're going to head to our La Vie crew. If you guys want a question in North Topsail Beach, come on in. Take us away. Hey.
Hi. So I have a few questions. My first one is for both of you.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite fact about snakes that might help people who are scared of snakes realize that they aren't so scary?
Sweet question.
So my favorite, I don't know if I really have any one favorite snake. I like all snakes. I kind of have the soft spot for venomous snakes because they're not treated well by a lot of people. We would also like to engage in more outreach, and we do and have been, to try to educate people that snakes aren't really as crazy bad and out to kill you as people think they are. Like both Nick and I mentioned, Massasaugas are a really cryptic species. They would rather you didn't notice they were there. When you look at a snake, it is at a huge disadvantage in terms of protecting itself. They have no legs, they don't move fast. Even the fastest snakes in the world, you can a slow jog and you're gonna pass them. So that's why sometimes when we approach snakes, in a way that they feel threatened, they may react defensively if they can't get away from you or if they feel cornered. So sometimes that's why snakes strike at people, and then people, that's how they get their reputation. But for the most part, if you leave a snake alone, it is not going to want to have anything to do with you. We are towering giants to them, and all we have to do is step on them, and we can cause them death or serious harm. So they don't want to have encounters with us. So the advice that we would like to give to people is, if they encounter any snakes in the wild, just admire it from a distance, take a picture of it. You don't have to pick it up. Especially don't pick up anything that you can't identify with 100% certainty. And even then, you shouldn't really pick it up, because some of them are protected, like Massasaugas. They are legally protected. It is illegal to harass them, collect them, to do all kinds of things with them. You're basically legally obligated by Canada and the province of Ontario not to touch them and just to leave them alone.
Sweet. Nick?
Okay. I'm going to give a slightly different answer. As a vet, it's always exciting to work with big animals. And so when I first arrived, sadly she's not with us anymore, but we were working with a big reticulated python called Fifi. I think Fifi weighed about 30 kilograms. What's that, like 60 pounds or something?
She was more than that. She was more like 180 pounds.
Oh, wow. She was enormous. She was, in that case, she was nearly my body weight. She was absolutely huge. So I think, from a veterinary perspective, it's always interesting to have kind of extraordinary patients like that. But I think, to Rick's point and what I said at the start, in my time here, my favourite snake has been this Massasauga. I've really enjoyed the work that we're doing with them, and it feels very meaningful. So, yeah.
Oh, very, very nice, gentlemen. And by the way, I've got to say, having met Fifi before, and reticulated python being the snake that I had my mother quiz me on when I was a boy, but what the longest snake in the world is, I'm really glad whenever we got them brought up. They're so cool. So great question, guys. All right, we're going to head to our Division 2 crew. Welcome in and take us away with your first question. Hey, guys. Hi. Oh, okay. You're in, but your audio isn't working, and I don't know why. So you can try smacking the computer, or you can try sharing it in the chat, and we'll come to you and take it that way. Your mic is on. It's just being finicky. So share it in the chat. We'll take as many as we can, and we'll go back to our YouTube audience while I'm waiting for your questions. Sorry, guys. All right. So many questions in our chat. Geez. Let's see. Okay. Can snakes laugh, from Miss Coburn's class, on one we've never gotten in our history?
Can a snake laugh?
I think the answer for me is no, but Rick is more knowledgeable about snakes.
Snakes generally don't vocalize or show any kind of motion like that, like we do, or even other mammals do. Some snakes will make hissing sounds as a threat to try to deter people from getting close to them, but that's about the only vocalization they can make.
They have this really interesting sense that people kind of, people know about snakes having divided tongues or forked tongues, and they have this funny organ in the roof of their mouth called a vomeronasal organ, where they're picking up things in the environment, and then they stick in the ends of their tongue in that organ. So they're sensing things in a different way to us, as well as not vocalizing.
I want to highlight that if you want to check out the vomeronasal organ, it's super cool, and you should below. I just put it on the screen. But I also, the program we had right before this was about a person who went up to like 20,000 feet in the mountains and got altitude sickness, and like you can hallucinate when you have that. So if you see a snake laughing at you, you're probably up a mountain somewhere, okay? That is our cue for the day. Mr. Horseman's class, a great question, guys. Thank you for sharing in the chat. Sorry the tech's not working for you, but what's the worst problem in a snake, or the worst issue in a snake that you've ever helped?
Some of the problems we've encountered here, which are really unfortunate, and some of the things we're trying to work on with this Massasauga project, are reproductive issues, particularly with females. They end up with what they call dystocia, or egg binding, where they don't give birth properly, and unfertilized ova, or potentially even partially developed embryos may get stuck in the reproductive tract, and that does not end up well for the snakes. We've also had issues with Massasaugas related to various diseases. Salmonella is one that we are also doing research on here, because it does seem to be a problem for snakes across the Species Survival Plan SAFE program, and it's something we want to try to nail down and see if we can mitigate the effects of this harmful salmonella that usually ends up causing neurological problems and ends up with the animals being humanely euthanized in the end, usually because they can't function properly because of the salmonella infection.
Yeah, and I mean, reptiles are really interesting in terms of viruses. As a vet, this is really fascinating. Snakes in particular, they have lots of respiratory viruses, they seem to, and they can transfer between different types of snakes. And so we think what's happened in the past in some instances is by having native and exotic snakes together, not here, but other zoos that I've worked at, I've come across this, you can inadvertently cross these diseases over. And a native snake here, like a Massasauga, would be, we would say, immunologically naive to some of these viruses. So that's why we're so careful with these biosecurity things that Rick and I have been talking about. We desperately don't want to introduce exotic viruses from abroad to native snakes here, because they can cause really nasty respiratory infections and even death.
Guys, thanks for the detailed answers. And I love the fact that in a broadcast with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants in the zoo, we can both have a stuffed snake behind you and talk about immunological naivete. Like, we've covered all the bases here. Kindergarten to grade 12. Way to go, everybody. We're going to head back to our Levy class for another one. Division 2, I'll take your other one in the chat. So 3 or 4 more questions before we wrap up. Come on back in North Carolina. Hey.
Hi. So my second question is, do any of the snakes show preference for mates, like humans or polar bears?
Ooh, cool question.
Mate preference.
Yes, and that's part of the research, which we were running out of time, so I didn't explain it as much as I wanted to. But we do these male-male combat trials, and then when a male is decided or is determined to be a victor in that combat trial, he will go and approach the female that's been in there and watching the whole thing. And they're doing things with hormones and stuff during this whole process. But I think actually mate selection is a very important process for breeding these Massasaugas. Historically, like within the species survival plan, we would pair them based on their genetic relatedness. So what looked good on paper, but then you would put the two together, and without proper cycling and perhaps just 2 snakes that didn't really like each other too much, they wouldn't do much. So those are some of the problems that we're trying to work out. And with the research we've done with the University of Illinois guys and the upcoming research we're going to do with multiple pairings, like males with multiple females, we are hoping to solve some of these questions.
Rick, master of understatement. The fact that male-male combat trial has been referenced in one of our programs is one of my all-time favorite things. So thank you very much for that, my day. My mind goes straight to American Gladiators, which I watched it when I was the age of our students. So thank you for that. Much appreciated. Division 2, we're going to come to you. We're going to wave at you, even though we can't hear you. Nice to have you back. How old do snakes usually get? Is there like a life expectancy generally for Massasaugas, for snakes across the board? Nick, we're on you apparently.
That's a great question, and we've got some quite good answers for that coming up, because one of the things we've been doing, and it's going to sound a little odd, but it's called a mortality review. So we go back and look at years, decades now of data to see all the collections, all the zoological institutions that keep Massasauga rattlesnakes, how long they live for in captivity, what kind of things happen to them, whether we euthanize them in old age or whether they die of a disease like those ones we've been talking about. So we know that snakes are living for probably about, on average, less than 10 years. And we'd like them to be living for longer and reproducing better in zoos than that is currently the case. We know that in the wild, we think probably the kind of longest that they live for is about 15 years. And so that sounds a little bit disappointing, like we could be doing better in zoos, and obviously we want to try that. But what we don't know about wild snakes is how many of them die before they get to 15. That's a few individuals that have been found that we know at that age from these long-term studies. But probably the vast majority of them don't make it anything like that long. They'll be predated or run over on a road, or something's going to happen to them. So, a little bit under 10 years, but we think we can do better than that.
I love this answer, and I'm really glad that both of you gentlemen have not shied away from talking about the fact that occasionally animals do die at a zoo or in a situation where you need to euthanize them. And I think this is really important for our classes to know, because a lot of people have sort of preconceived notions of how zoos deal with animals. And I've got to say, having been in person to the Toronto Zoo many times, having done many broadcasts with you, you will not find a more dedicated group of people on this planet about the animals in their care than the Toronto Zoo staff. And this is true of a lot of zoos around the world. Zoos are increasingly like the hubs of conservation. We talked about a lot of the work you're doing for that. So I'm really glad we talked about that. I encourage everyone, check out the zoo's social media pages. Have done a really nice job of highlighting how the zoo community deals with it when animals do pass away. So just thank you for that. It's really, really important. Guys, time flies and you're having fun. We're nearing the end of the broadcast. I think I'm going to take 2 more questions before we wrap up. We'll do them a rapid fire round, one from YouTube and one back from our La Vie crew. Miss Coburn's class wants to know, Nick, but you can both answer this. What education do you need to do this job? If someone wanted to be you when they grew up, what would they do?
So first thing is, there's no one path. My advice would be, if you really want to do it, you definitely can. I guess the key thing is you become a vet if you want to be a vet working with wildlife. So I did my veterinary degree after school. I did it in the UK, that's where I'm from originally. And then increasingly people are adding something else, an extra qualification as well as experience. So I did a master's in something called Wild Animal Health, which is a course run at London Zoo and the Royal Veterinary College in the UK. But out here in North America, you could do an internship somewhere, spend a year at a place like here, if we set one of those up, or a residency program for 3 years. Or you might take a different route and go and work for a veterinary practice straight out of vet school that did some work with wild animals. You do domestic animal work, but also some wild animal work, and gradually get your way into it like that. So I think there are lots of routes, and the main thing is, if it's something that you really want to go for, you can. And the final thing, just a little plug, we do have an externship here. So if you get to vet school, in your sort of final couple of years, you could come here for a 3-week externship and see what being a zoo vet is all about.
Sweet. And then Rick, tell us more.
For me, I have a Bachelor of Science degree, which I graduated from in 1990. So I was graduated from university before a lot of people who work here were born.
including me, Rick.
Yeah, so it's unfortunate for me, but things have changed. But as Nick said, there are lots of different options you can do. If you're looking for animal care, honestly, experience in working in other places like nature centers and things like that can be really helpful. But yeah, as far as education goes, bachelor's degree, there's some other courses that you can take to improve your animal care skills and knowledge too.
Well, and many years of experience. Like, this is a thing that I want to stress for many jobs, is that a lot of the people we bring on these broadcasts do something, end up somewhere, and gain most of the skills, 95% of the skills they do, actually doing the work at a place like the Toronto Zoo. So if you're keen, we had an earthquake geologist on the other day who started out as a professional actress, and then she just had an earthquake happen where she was, thought, how cool is that? Went back to school, and now she's like the lead geologist for California. So whatever you're keen on, keep up that curiosity. And I always love when we get that question. Thanks, guys. All right, one more with Feeling La Vie. We're going to wrap up with you. Come on in and take us away. Hey.
Hi. Okay, so I had another question, which is, what kind of enrichment do the snakes need, or do we not know?
Ooh, enrichment for the snakes.
What kind of enrichment do they need, or are there anything we are still trying to figure out that they might need?
So most of the enrichment that I feel the snakes require revolve around simulating natural environment. They typically don't act with or react to enrichment things that we would consider more in line with what we give to mammals, like play with things and stuff like that. There have been a number of zoos and a number of individuals trying to do different things, including snake training and stuff. But I find, in my opinion, and I just might be old school, is I really like to try to mimic or recreate all the natural things that they need to do to go through all of their natural functions. So providing them with a safe hide spot, providing them with proper lighting and heating, providing them with proper natural cycling, These are all things that mimic what they do in the wild, which is what, in my opinion, enrichment is all about. It's all about trying to recreate the behaviors and conditions that they would experience in nature.
Just to add to that, and I'm slightly out of my wheelhouse here, but I think some of the things Rick and I have been talking about earlier when I wasn't in the room, but for example, bromating them, actually having them hibernate effectively over the winter. Zoos don't always do this for species, not just snakes, but species that would hibernate in the wild. We don't always do it, but I think we probably should. Having them meet other snakes, whether it's in a kind of combat type situation or this polygamous breeding kind of idea. So yeah, exactly like Rick says, trying to mimic as best as we can what they would experience in the wild.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for such a deep dive into all the cool stuff you're up to. It's been such a thrill having you on. I can't encourage our audience enough. Check out the Guardians program at the zoo. Check this one out on YouTube or Facebook if you're tuning in from the zoo side. But thank you so much for keeping us going. We've got one more program next week before we wrap up for the year. We're going to bring in our Levy group to say a big thank you and farewell, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye for now, guys.
Thank you so much.
You guys all thank